If you like what you see, go ahead and subscribe to see more of our content. And also make sure to ring the bell if you actually want to see our content. Thanks, YouTube. If you really like what you see, you should know that we did this all with a budget of half a bent penny. Just imagine what we can do with an actual budget. By checking out our Patreon, you can find out. This week, I'm glad to add both Nullstring and Andrew to Morello and Rielle here on our list of rare tier and up patrons. And of course, thank you as always to our other patrons at other tiers. You should definitely start with our affiliate link down in the description whenever you make a purchase over at TCG Player. Alright, that's the shameless... What's that? Devin wants me to mention that we have social media accounts and are keeping track of them now. And of course, you can always find the relevant links down in the description. Alright, that's the shameless promotion out of the way. Let's go ahead and get into the video. Hey everyone, it's Matt here, and welcome back to another CommanderGuys gameplay video. Some of you may have noticed, but we're making a solid effort to be live and responsive on various social media platforms. To that end, we actually have 2 new people helping us out. Devin and I sat down for a Q&A a little earlier this week, and after I finish up my move, that should be all edited and up on the channel. But there, we'll officially introduce both Josh and Gio and their new roles on the channel. But as of right now, you'll be able to find them wherever you can find the CommanderGuys content. This week, we've got a fun game lined up, which ends in yet another non-conventional way. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump straight in to player introductions. First off this week, we have Kyle, cooking up an omelet, alongside Atla Palani, Nest Tender. He built a less combo-y version of Atla, which has more of a focus on using her ability to cheat out dinosaurs. Kyle kept Temple of Abandon, Myriad Landscape, Forerunner of the Empire, Seedborn Muse, Sunscorch Regent, Tireless Tracker, and Rootborn Defenses. Next up is Danny, bringing back his Hazezon Tamar deck for another go. This deck heavily focuses on using Hazezon's delayed trigger to create a ton of tokens, in order to trigger various damage-dealing effects and wipe out his opponents in one large burst. Danny kept Hour of Promise, Temple of Triumph, a pair of Forests, a Plains, Beast Within, and Beastmaster Ascension. Then comes RJ, playing Rielle the Everwise. RJ's Rielle deck is looking to turn the normal downside of discarding cards as a cost into an upside, in order to draw out his deck and win with one of these. RJ kept Sphinx's Tutelage, Browlet Skyshark Rider, Soul Ring, a pair of Islands, Lonely Sandbar, and Goblin Electromancer. Last but not least, we have Brian, playing the new Radha Heart of Keld. This is a deck that wants to dump lands on the battlefield to trigger various landfall effects, while also giving Radha the option to pump itself for lethal commander damage. Brian kept Nature's Claim, Horn of Greed, Dryad of the Elysian Grove, Sheltered Thicket, Fabled Passage, a Snow-Covered Forest, and Lotus Cobra. Kyle starts us off. He drops a Temple of Abandon, and leaves the card he scries on top. Then Danny does the same with a Temple of Triumph. RJ drops an Island, and casts a Soul Ring. And then Brian closes out round 1 with a tapped Sheltered Thicket. Kyle drops a Myriad Landscape, and passes off. Danny drops a Forest, and passes as well. RJ drops an Island, and casts a Search for Azcanta. He cycles a Lonely Sandbar, and draws a card before passing off. Brian drops a Forest, and casts a Lotus Cobra as someone hits the recording stand. Kyle drops a Forest, and pays to crack his Myriad Landscape. He uses it to bring in a pair of planes tapped, and then passes off. Danny drops a planes. He casts a Beastmaster Ascension, and passes turn. RJ looks at the top card of his library with Search, and leaves it on top, before drawing for turn. He plays an untapped Sulphur Falls, and then casts his commander Rielle. RJ then passes off. Brian drops a mountain, and floats a mana from Lotus Cobra. He casts Dryad of the Elysian Grove, and drops a Fabled Passage, which floats another mana. He then cracks the passage to bring in an untapped forest, and float yet another mana. Finally, Brian casts his commander Radha, and passes turn. Kyle casts the Tireless Tracker, before dropping an untapped Cinder Glade. As the Glade ETBs, Tireless Tracker investigates, and then Kyle passes off. Danny drops a forest, and passes. RJ misses his search trigger, before dropping an island for turn. He casts a Windfall, and in response, Brian casts a Nature's Claim to destroy RJ's search. RJ misses his life gain, as Danny Beast Within's Dryad of the Elysian Grove, while also giving Brian a 3/3 beast. Windfall then resolves, and as everyone wheels, we'll be right back. After the wheel, RJ draws an additional 6 cards thanks to Rielle's ability. He casts an Arcane Signet, and then leaves 2 mana open, before discarding down and passing off. Brian drops a Spire Garden, and adds a mana from Lotus Cobra. He casts a Wood Elves, and as it enters, he goes to bring in his own Cinder Glade, while also adding another mana from Lotus Cobra. He then casts a Cultivate, and brings in both a tapped forest and a mountain to hand. He follows up with a Shadow Spear, and pays to equip it to Radha, before moving to combat and swinging Radha at RJ. RJ takes 4, and Brian gains 4 from lifelink, before passing turn. And at his end step, Kyle cracks his clue token to draw a card, while also adding a +1/+1 counter to the tracker. Kyle drops a command tower. He casts a Soul Ring, and follows it up with his commander Atla, before passing off. Danny drops a mountain, and passes off without casting a spell again. RJ drops a Temple of the False God. He casts Teferi's Ageless Insight, and goes to pass turn. And at RJ's end step, Danny casts Deladomri's Call, and goes to tutor up a Yavimaya Elder to his hand. Brian drops a Reliquary Tower, and adds a mana. He casts a Rampant Growth, and brings in a tapped mountain, which adds another mana. He follows up with a Sword of the Animist, and pays to equip it to Radha as well. Brian moves to combat, and swings his commander at Kyle. This triggers Sword of the Animist, and in response, Kyle cracks his clue, adding another counter to the tracker, before drawing a card. Brian then goes to bring in a tapped forest, and gains 5 life, as Kyle takes 5 damage. And with nothing else this turn, Brian passes off. Kyle drops a mountain, and creates another clue. He casts a Marauding Raptor, and then activates his commander Atla to create a 0/2 egg token. The egg gets scrambled by the 2 damage from Raptor, and turns into a Combat Celebrant, which immediately dies to the Raptor as it enters. Kyle then casts a Farseek, and uses it to bring in a tapped Stomping Ground, which creates another clue token. He then passes turn. Danny casts Yavimaya Elder, and immediately cracks it. He draws a card as the Elder dies, and goes to put both a mountain and a plains to hand. He then plays the plains for turn, and passes off to RJ. RJ drops a mountain, and passes turn. Brian drops a mountain, and adds a mana from Lotus Cobra. He activates Radha's ability, giving her +11/+11 until end of turn. He then moves to combat, and swings Radha at RJ for what will clearly be lethal damage. And on that attack, he goes to bring in a tapped mountain. Before moving to blockers, RJ casts a Channeled Force, targeting himself to draw, and Radha to receive damage, while discarding a total of 5 cards as an additional cost. RJ draws a total of 20 cards, as Radha takes 5 damage. Still before declaration of blockers, RJ casts Fateful Showdown, also targeting Radha. In response to that, Brian activates Radha again, bringing its total power and toughness up to 28/28. RJ then discards a total of 19 cards, and deals 19 to Radha, before drawing a total of 38 thanks to Teferi's Ageless Insight. Unable to deal with Radha despite all the cards he's drawn, RJ decides he won't give Brian the satisfaction of taking him out of the game. He casts Tolarian Winds, and would draw a total of 76, which is more than enough to deck himself out. No damage ends up resolving through, so Brian doesn't gain life. And with nothing else this turn, he passes off. And once again at his end step, Kyle cracks another clue, drawing a card, and adding another +1/+1 counter to Tireless Tracker. Kyle drops an untapped Rootbound Crag, and misses his investigation trigger. He casts Awakening Sun's Avatar, which takes 2 damage from the Raptor. And with the Avatar's ETB on the stack, he makes another omelet with Atla, which turns into Polyraptor. As the Polyraptor ETBs, Marauding Raptor shocks it. This damage enrages Polyraptor, which creates a token of itself, restarting this process. This creates an infinite mandatory loop, which no player at the table currently has a way to break. So the combo continues to make more and more and more Polyraptors until... hello? Hello? I guess no one wins.